What's up, you guys? Today I'm going to be showing you how to do Hypertrance like Nuphory and Exodia. You can get this full template, the Ableton file, the samples, the MIDI, the presets, everything from this video is at the top of the description on my website. Definitely go grab that so you can make your own Hypertrance track, and let's get started. We're at 165 BPM. Now, I notice a lot of these tracks, there are the really fast Hypertrance tracks. There's also some slower ones too. Like, I think anywhere from like 150 to 200 BPM is kind of where this lies. The first thing we got here is our kick. It's a pretty simple kick. It's literally just kind of like a normal trance type of kick. I've converted it to mono. There are something I want to show you, which are these little fills though. Like there's this at the end of every 8 bars. Right? Like those kind of very like 2000s trance hardcore kind of fills. The way you do those is just kind of creating a bit of rhythm. Like here I've got the super fast notes and then some 16th notes and then just an 8th note there. But also it's the velocities I think are really important, and you could even go in on it more, like do something like this. You know, that really creates the rhythm, because if it's all just the same velocity, you know, it's not quite as impactful as that kind of like building up thing. It's really subtle. Plus also with everything being a sidechain, you can hear it kind of ducks everything a little bit as well, which I noticed in these tracks is good. Then we got the bass line. So it's following our chord progression. We're going D major, B minor, F sharp minor, and then A major, and then another B minor. The MIDI might look complicated. It's just jumping octaves. It's just 16 notes going da 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 da, and then yeah, it's just going up an octave. You can see if I put it down. This is important because I noticed you want that like kind of groove, but at the same time, like if you get rid of these lower notes, you'll hear. Right, it doesn't really fill in the space enough. You really want this bass line to like fill out the whole bar. So having the lower rolling notes and then just jumping up for the upbeats with those higher notes works really well. I'll talk more about the chord progression when we get to the pad. For the sound on this one, it's made with wavetable. So it's a pretty simple trance sound. A lot of this stuff is very basic trance sounds, but it's more so like how it's being used, how fast the track is, and also the master processing, which we'll talk about in a second too. But yeah, as far as the bass line goes, it's just 2 saw waves. One is an octave up. We've got also the sub oscillator, and then on the saw waves, there's this classic unison. The unison doesn't go, and if you didn't know this, in wavetable, when you turn on the unison, it doesn't apply to the sub, so you still have that. Because if you get rid of the sub, right, it's really lacking in the low end. But then at the same time, you get rid of the saw waves. You know, so they both work together, but yeah, you definitely want to have that sub oscillator there. I've got a low pass filter with just a short punchy envelope. Again, you know, this is like a very normal trance bass. And then we're just side chaining it to the kick. No real processing on the bass like that. I've got the pad. So yeah, this is the chord progression you can see. Now, if you notice the root notes that I told you, like this D major, for example, the lowest note on that chord here is A, is because what we're doing is we're taking the fifths of the chord. Normally a chord is root, third, fifth, right? That's like a very basic way to structure your chords. But if you put that fifth down an octave, check out what it sounds like up, and then down. You can see the chord sounds a lot better and more epic. It's also more spread out where you can like hear each note more. Another thing is with this, if I get rid of the pad, you can hear that pad is filling in a very crucial spot in the mid-range, kind of like in between the bass and the lead. So to put that down an octave kind of fits it a little bit better in there. Then for the actual sound, again, a lot of this is very basic trance sounds. It's just a saw wave with a noise unison all the way up. I've got it sidechained to the kick. This one though, really, like it sounds kind of basic here, but what's going on the master is doing a lot to this one, which I'll talk about at the end. Then we have our drums. So yeah, pretty simple trance drums. The thing I noticed is like in the real like Nuphory and Exodia tracks, you almost don't hear these as much. Right, because you have this lead which is just so blown out and so high, and that's alright. Like some genres, you do have stuff that clashes, and if you try to be so perfect about not clashing, then you're kind of missing the point. I mean, with this Hypertrance, you know, all that high end really pushes together, so I got that. Now, for the snare, this is how you make these classic kind of like distorted trance snare claps. What we're doing here is we got a clap and a snare together. You can see I made the snare a little bit shorter with the sustain down here. And then the clap is like a long one, like you really hear the tail. And that sort of noise. This is going to be important for the distortion. You want a short snare and a long clap. Then you high pass it. And then distort it. And then high pass again, because sometimes the distortion adds some low end. Now, if you don't high pass into the distortion, that can also work, but I find if you really just want this to just right on top of the drums, high passing into the distortion works best. And you hear it now, because what you're hearing, like what I was saying about the tails, is like you can hear the clap. Right, all that tail is really ringing out, and then the snare is just a little ch. You can even make it shorter and do like this. Right, because the snare is just there for the transient, and then the clap gives you like the body of the sound. We got a close hi-hat, which is just being sidechained to the kick. And I've also got this little rave loop, where I just took like a house loop. Like if you listen, this is like a lot slower from default. And then it basically is sped up a lot. That's how you get these. It's like house drums going way faster, and then we high pass it, and this auto pan here is giving it a sidechain effect, but with these rave loops I like to do it like this because it's a little more like controllable. Then we got the lead. So this lead, we're in the key of D minor or D major. But what we're doing is we're kind of playing it like a minor scale, right? Because you see we're starting actually on the third. Right? So you have these like minor kind of movements in there. And then up here. Right? So we're kind of treating this like an F sharp minor scale. The funny thing is if you look at it, it's not even that many voices from that scale. It's just 3 of them. It's just F sharp, A, and G sharp. So root, third, and ninth. And then you just basically... What it is it's that call and response between the first half and then the second half, right? It's like using only a few notes to create this very busy pattern that kind of has that call and response, and the call and response gives it complexity, not how many notes you have in the pattern. For the sound, what we're doing is it starts as a pretty basic trance sound. It's 2 saw waves, an octave, or it's a saw wave and a noise, white noise right here. You can see they're an octave apart, and then I've got this classic unison. And the amp envelope is set like this, so it's a bit punchier. Then we're just sending it to hell with the saturator. Right, but that gives it that really cool kind of hypertrance sort of sound. Bit of delay. Bit of reverb as well. Then we sidechain it to the kick, and then we have a high pass filter. Now, this stuff all together, that is how you produce it, but the master processing for this genre is really important. If you don't do this, check out how it sounds without anything on the master. It's good, but it's kind of like a more straightforward trance kind of thing, right? It's really not that like crazy blown out, like the real sound of Hypertrance. Now, For this, there's two things. One is essential and one you could use sometimes. So we'll start with the essential part, which is saturation. And then, this is why the Ableton saturator is so good, is putting it on soft clip. So you're basically limiting this and keeping it from hitting past 0 dB. Like, it's not going to actually clip. But then you can still push everything up against 0 dB essentially and kind of like drive it. And this is where you kind of get like the drums disappearing and a bit of that more kind of like Hypertrance magic that you hear. I'm telling you, like, all of these tracks have master processing going on. There's no way to do this kind of distorted, like, glued sound, because that's really what the distortion does too, is it glues everything. I would recommend the medium curve setting and then start turning up the drive. You can see you don't even need that much. Also, this amount low is good. That's basically just, if you look here, making it so you're not necessarily distorting the lows as much. If we turn that off, it can allow a little bit more just saturation on the high end and not so much just like boom from the low end, but that's a case by case thing, right? And this whole thing is like case by case. You could also try hard curve. That tends to be a bit more fried though. I think medium curve is kind of perfect, and then you just use a bit of drive to get there. The other thing that's not on every track, but I definitely heard this in the Exodia tracks, is a little bit of a low pass filter before the saturation. Now when I say a little bit, you can see this is a little bit. So I'll just play it without, and then I'll turn it on and you can hear what this is doing. Here's without. With. So you can see it's really, really subtle, right? All it's doing is just cutting a little bit of that high end off, kind of like the lo-fi effect I've talked about in other videos, where like that sound, like if you really want that like old, like to me this is like Dance Dance Revolution kind of vibes, right? Like, you know, old 2000s kind of trance. And the way to really get that older sound is essentially like, yeah, a lot of analog gear literally just cuts a little bit of highs off of the sound. So we do that here. I've got the resonance up a bit as well. And then also that into the saturation you can have a lot of fun with, like when you turn up the resonance. So yeah, not every track, but I definitely heard that in a lot of the Exodia stuff to kind of get that sound. Again, the master processing is really, really important. This is the only mastering you need really is a saturator with the soft clip, but it's a really, really important part to get that kind of glue. So that's going to be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. Let me know if you want to see more of these kind of tutorials in the comments. Make sure to grab this template at the top of the description on my website because it really helps support me. But more importantly, you can make your own Hypertrance track today, right? As soon as you download it, it gives you everything you need to build your own tracks. So definitely check that out. Thanks for the support, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow with another video.